Hello and welcome to Driven by Doing podcast. Today we have Vinnie Fisher from Akron, Ohio. Vinnie, welcome to the show.
Venki, thanks for having me. I am excited to be on the show.
So let's go back and start from the very early days. And you went to college back in New York. And are you originally from there? Let's go back to those days and let's begin from there.
Yeah, so I'm a New Yorker, right? So when I was a little guy, I lived in the entire state of New York. For people who aren't familiar with New York, it's not just New York City. But I was born upstate in a little city called Rochester. But in the early years, my dad was a DJ for NBC. And so he spent late night radio. We lived in the Bronx. So I lived in the city. And then circumstances required us to move out of the city. And we moved into New Jersey for a period of time. And then I did my formative years near Albany, New York. And I went to college in Buffalo. So I'm a New York guy.
That's awesome. So since you went to college there and you also did your political science degree, and
Yes.
what made you pick that major at that time? Are you like really fascinated to learn more about that? Or is it just that, hey, like I heard about this program and I wanted to explore more. So what made you to choose that program?
Well, Venki, I'm a lawyer by training. And so I'm an M&A attorney that has a tax specialty. And going into undergraduate, I wanted what would have been the traditional track into law school. And so in my youthful thinking, I just thought that based on what I thought I want to do with my law career, a political science degree was the way to go through the pre-law sequence to get into law school.
So do you always wanted to become a lawyer since you're a kid? Like, is there any story for that?
Yeah, I think my personality, the gifting that the good Lord's given me is I'm a debater. So you bring up a subject, I love to debate it. And I think forever, because of that gifting in my personality, some might say arguer, other might be, stubborn guy, but I'm a debater. And even if you have a good point and you're not making it, I'll make it for you. Well, that's always been my nature. So people in my life would have said always, you should be a lawyer. And somewhere along the way, that kind of stuck. And I went in that direction. And I was the first person in my family to generationally graduate from college and an advanced degree in law school. So it's kind of a big deal for all of us that I went in that direction.
Wow. So since you got your degree and went to law school, what happened next once you graduate? Did you like just go into practice, or what was the world look like back then for you?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to do well in school, and I was recruited by a big fancy firm and was in this big firm with a lot of really well-heeled, disciplined, intelligent lawyers where I got my first training at this big firm. It was in there a few years in, I realized I had a little bit more of an entrepreneurial spirit than what I would say is the traditional path of a lawyer. So about 3 years in, I broke out and partnered up with two other men and started running my own law firm with them. And only a few years later, about 10 years into my practice in total, I wound down my practice and went into business with this whiz-bang internet kid. And I've been running internet businesses since about 2007.
Wow. So what was your first business, internet business, Vinny? Let's go back to that story.
Yeah, it's so different now. Technology has really caught up. But when you think early 07, it's months away from when we first have our first version of a smartphone, where the idea of Facebook is just kind of new. So tech and all of the things supporting tech is still pretty C-panel flat, not much going on. We had an info publishing business, and we had to deliver what now people call ebooks by electronic PDF downloads. And so we had our first version of a publishing company where we would self-publish as well as authored published material. And we launched a publishing company in 07, a digital publishing company, and ran that until about 2010 when we opened and sold off that company and opened up a shared web hosting company in the early days before free website builders were built. And we were at the front edge of having to build the technology of whatever idea we could come up with.
That's awesome. So you always follow the trend. Seems like you're always the early adopter and like you see that trends and the opportunity. And what was it like back then? Because even before, this is like, back in 2008, 9, that
Yeah.
range, and there is this huge financial crisis that happened during the same moment. So
Yeah.
what was it like to do business and being an entrepreneur at that time?
Somewhat like's going on right now. I'll say it this way: that correction hurt the real estate industry and all of the banking sector very heavily. And anything that came off of that. The early days of the digital community and the internet, we actually didn't feel much of the pressure, especially if you sold lower priced items. Like now, higher ticket or higher priced items, luxury items, are taking a correction, right? People are tightening their budget. They're worried about what they're spending money on. But in our digital publishing business, our average price point for a digital download, now called an ebook, was under $39. And so we really didn't see much of a hit. What happened to us, and I wrote a book about some of my journey in this, and I really want to give that book out and other things to our community. So my team, we created a gifting page where your community can go get it specifically for your people, kind of thanking you for all the stuff you're doing. So if we go to fullyaccountable.com/driven-by-doing, you can go get a hold of our first best-selling book called CEO's Mindset. And in there, I kind of really bare my soul about breaking early on our business, where I was setting out to grow something big, but I wasn't maturing the parts of doing it. Well, during this time, right on the backside of '08, you may or may not remember, but we came very slowly out of that correction. It wasn't a depression, but it was a recession. But we came out very slow. We didn't come out fast. We didn't recover quickly. So it took 3 years for people to really come out of that. Well, we broke one of our divisions in our company pretty badly, and gave back. We got in a pretty healthy argument with the bank because the banking rules got pretty tight. So they closed down one of our lines. And in that process, we were like dollars away from our company having to close, and we were immensely profitable. It was really one of the hardest business times of my life.
Wow. So I mean, I could just imagine what you might have went through, especially just trying to survive. And a lot of businesses like really struggled during that time. But especially after that period, and again 2011 and 12, like business came back and they thrived after then, since COVID. And again, we are kind of like seeing the similar trend,
Yeah.
but in a different scenario altogether. But like people are expecting some kind of recession, last year. Hey, there's a lot of chat and debate around, hey, 2020, 2021, we might see the recession, but never we could have predicted this coming, especially with COVID-19. So what do you think are the major differences, that since you kind of experienced both being an entrepreneur, what are some of the things that are common, and what are some of the things that are completely different when you compare both the periods?
I think the one thing that, I think there's a few things I think we should all recognize. One is 94% of businesses never see their 10th year in business. Mm-hmm. So the reality is that 95% or so of people did not run the business they're running during the last correction. So they're in the middle of, it's like the first time they're going through it. And most likely the majority of our workforce really didn't operate or control the business they were running back the last time this happened. So there's not going to be the similarity of massive overlap of experience of people going through it before that are going through it now. The other thing I say very often recently is there was a line drawn in the sand, and it was local and it was retail. And anyone who was running local and retail didn't do anything wrong. There was just a line drawn in the sand. And this virus impacted movement, and people stayed home, and it's recorrecting the way we do business. If the governor of Ohio got on the line and said the virus is in the computer and you can't log into the internet, my businesses would have taken a big hit. So I'm not sure that I did anything right either. I think all corrections, people land on one side of the line or the other. And depending on which side of the line you are, dictates which direction you're going to head. And the health of your business will also dictate the speed in which you're going to head in that direction. So one interesting thing that's going on right now is I think the online buying behavior and the way community e-commerce was going to be conducted in 2022, 23, 24, all the way up to 2030 was going to be more and more consumerism online. Well, forcing offices to close and people to stay home has accelerated the first initial habit of buying from home. So what we've done is we've accelerated or quickened the behavior of buying online. So we are probably living in 2023 or 2024 consumer behavior activity as it relates to buying off of the internet. And so we're going to make some pretty massive corrections in a 6-month time that probably was going to be a 3 to 4 year conversion of time. That's one major difference. Another one is this idea that people have been introduced to the idea of remote working. It was seen as a way to protect at first, to keep everyone safe. Now, commerce and business is still going, and people are like, wait a minute, we don't have to do all of this from an office setting. Well, that we were going to get there, Venki. We're just now getting there so much faster. So I think some of the job loss, we've had more women in this cycle of job loss decide to leave the workforce and stay home, not because we've gone back to an era where men work and women don't, but children are home, schools closed, who's going to stay home and be the primary caretaker? Jobs are closing. All of a sudden, people are like, wait a minute, we might do things differently. And when you're seeing permanent job losses to the tune of 3.5 million jobs, probably never coming back, a lot of those are people exiting the workforce, not just retirees, but maybe moms that are needing to stay home and address family concerns because they can't do both.
You're absolutely right. Thanks for sharing those great insights, Vinny. And I mean, it's just mind blowing, like what happened in the just last 6 months, which we could not have predicted 2 years ago. And this time is super difficult for a lot of people and a lot of businesses, a lot of parents at home trying to navigate through this whole challenge because just having kids at home like all the time and like not having to go to work and just remote work at home. So there are a lot of challenges navigating. So now let's come to your story of how you started Fully Accountable. So that's what you're the CEO of the company. And like, what was your story? Like at what point that you created this business in order to like really provide great services for these e-commerce businesses, digital marketing agencies. So tell us a little bit about like how you got started, your journey on Fully Accountable.
So I again, back to that gift page where we're going to give out, I wrote another book called False Profits. Mm-hmm. And the whole tagline here is it's not the top line that pays you. Well, when I got done with the web hosting company, I always had this desire to be in the health industry, specifically health supplements, healthy living, promote a healthy life that's better than just the prescribed medicine and diet we kind of live in our North American lifestyles. I always kind of had a desire to be there. So I opened up my first version of a health company. And while we were running that, I was profiting at about 8%. We had a couple pretty successful products. We were starting to do quite well. Well, you ever like grow your month and you're making this money and you have all this money and then you like don't have anything left in the bank account. And you're like, where did it all go? Well, I'm really quite good at growing something quickly, but I always had this aversion or I avoided dealing with the profit or bottom line or the tough stuff of finances, partly because I'm just afraid of terminology I didn't know. Also, I'm not an accountant. I'm not a CFO. I'm not any of the things that ultimately will lead to what's awesome about our company. But so there I was running this company. And one day I woke up and I'm like, wait a minute. It's not about the gross revenue that we bring into the company. It's what's left in our pocket at the end of the month. And I know that sounds like so basic to everybody listening, but it hit me like a ton of bricks, like this, what people might say is an aha moment. And right then I realized, I went on this journey to realize, what should my health company that's selling supplements be profiting? And I quickly learned that that type of company that I built should be profiting at 20%, not 8%. And all of a sudden, everything flipped on its head for me. And I started focusing on, where am I losing the 12%, not that I'm making 8%. And my journey became to get us to 20%. I started to become the most dedicated to fighting for our profit margin. And during that process, I'm like, wait a minute, there's a better way to do this. Like, the old system and the old technology is inundated. It has not caught up to the internet. And so I said to my team at the time, we're going to do it a better way. And they're all like, you're not an accountant. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, well, maybe that's what it'll take to fix this. So I took my CFO at the time and I sat down and shared my dream of what I'd love for this to be. And he's like, we can do that. He became my co-founder. And in 2014, we started doing it for our sister companies. And by early 2015, like February, we launched to the world. Here we sit 6 years later, and everyone looks at us like an overnight success because of what's going on now. But we had to build that thing from the beginning and build the tech, connect to banks, automated downloads, all the things that would allow us to be a fractional CFO and controller for businesses didn't exist. We had to do it manually. And here we are, the leader in our industry with hundreds of clients and over 75 people on our team. And people are like, wow, it's amazing. Look what you're doing for our industry. Well, I can show you the first couple seasons where it was really hard to build this. And now we're just quite thankful to be doing what we're doing.
That is amazing, Vinnie. Like, how you just got this idea, hey, like, we can make this better. And there are so many problems in this area that, I mean, you're not an accountant, but you still just figured it out. And I think the point I'm trying to make here is, a lot of us, like, we see these problems all around us, and we sometimes, like, natural tendency that we tell to ourselves, like, hey, like, I do not know how to solve it, but I think you're just so passionate about solving that problem for yourself and so many people around you, because you just wanted to make it better, even if it is a small, simple percentage. So once you get that idea, now you went to your CFO and then said, hey, like, this is what my dream is. Like, can we just build it? And that you shared that with people around you to make you accountable at the end of the day. Hey, like, you know what, like, I'm talking about this and I know a little bit, but I'm not super good at it, or I still don't know how to solve it. But you started sharing with people. And when you shared with your co-founder and, like, you both wanted to start this company, like, what are those initial steps that you have taken? Because a lot of people who are listening, they're all like thinking, hey, like, I wanted to start my business, or I wanted to work on this startup, and I have this problem that I'm passionate about. But sometimes what happens is, like, we stick to the idea. So, and we stick to the idea and not really knowing if that is something that people are looking for. So how did you get your first customers? Because that's when you start to realize, hey, like, there is huge potential there. So tell us.
Okay, two things. One is, I want to make sure everybody who's in starting a business, excited about it, has to know at the start of something, you get one of two reactions. You get people giving you oh, that's nice, that's cute. Or you get a bunch of people, like, actually lovingly, but they're talking you out of it because they're, like, afraid of all the work it's going to be to make it successful. So early on, I've had to always learn when I'm starting something that I'm going to get a lot of noise that's going to actually distract me. And usually I have to fight almost like a lion in the jungle through all of this crazy noise to keep going. Even my business partner, if he was standing right here next to me, he never was convinced that we were going to grow it into something. He liked it, but he couldn't see the full vision of it. So early on, like, that was the first part of the battle. And I say all the time, the two hardest customers to get are the first one and the second one. Those are the hardest ones. And so early on, we had one secret weapon. At the time, it looked like a weapon and ultimately produced to be a distraction. But I'm an entrepreneur and I had a couple of my own businesses that we were incubating on. Some of that was good. Some of that was a massive distraction. And we had to ultimately close and sell some of those. But getting to the end of 2014, after a few of our internal sister companies were working, a couple of my friends, here's my advice I'd give to people. If you can't get your network to support your idea, people know you, what makes you think strangers are going to do it? And so I went to my network of a few people that were like, hey, that's kind of cool what you're doing. Would you do it for us? And I had to make up the pricing. I didn't know what we were going to price. I didn't know the amount of work we were going to do. And I said, yes, sure. And it was right at that moment I realized we had something for other people, because I first started it for us. And then I was like, we might actually have something for other people. And so it started solving our own problem. And then quickly I'm like, I think we can help other people. And it was then that the hard part started, when all of the noise came. Oh, Vinnie, you're a good marketer. You're a sales guy. You're an internet guy. Why are you opening this boring service company? And I caught all kinds of noise from people. And for the first couple of years, we were gaining clients, have still a very good offer, but that battle of startup, most people give up at that phase because it's so hard to push through that noise. But I say this, if you can't get someone to be some of your initial customers and go with you, maybe you're not really solving a problem.
Wow, because like that is super important, the message that you shared, Vinny, because sometimes like we are afraid to share our idea because what we ask these questions to ourselves, like what would people think if I share this idea? Or I mean, even some other people might even think that, hey, like, would somebody steal my idea? And people sometimes like had these different varieties of questions in their heads. And sometimes what happens most of the time is they don't take action. And it's already very difficult to actually prove that something is going to work because it is just an idea. And on top of it, you have got these different varieties of questions because, I mean, like, since you already got this entrepreneurship experience before, that might have been worked in your favor because, like, you know that, hey, like, I need to solve this problem for myself first and I can talk with my network. And you also shared about, like, hey, like, you can ask your network if you can help them. And what makes you think that somebody else who doesn't even know you is going to trust you in creating this service, new service for them? So once you got those initial customers, what was it like to expand your business beyond your initial network or group of friends?
So my first success in business was selling products and information. So I didn't make money in my first part. Well, I had my law firm, but then I had my phase as an entrepreneur where I made money on products and information, not on the labor of people. So building a service company and hiring is extremely difficult. And so, especially in a market where everything was going amazing, the labor market, we think of what's going on in 2016 and 2017. If you don't hire someone the first second you talk to them, they're getting hired by somebody else. They're like gone. The labor market is massively competitive. I'm making up the structure and the system to our business, fighting an accountancy system that's doing it an old way, trying to educate the consumer of a better way to do it. It was extremely hard. I will say to people, growing and scaling a service company to above $1 million and then 2 and then 3 is really hard at each one of those stages. Getting past a certain point, they're actually a lot harder to break than maybe a product or info company. So, people stare at us now and say, oh, we'd love to do that. And I'd say, you need to stare at season 1 and 2 of us and know, thankfully, I have 2 traits about me. I'm stubborn. I tend to be persistent. And I'm probably, if I'm being honest, not the smartest guy. I'm just willing to take more risk than the average person. So I stuck it out. So I endured all of the hits we took. And so I remember reading this book once. It was written by Phil Knight, Shoe Dog. And he talked about what it changed for him, anxiety in business, when he woke up every day fearing the next problem in his business, and it exhausted him. And then one day he woke up and realized, actually, wait a minute, I have it all wrong. I get the privilege to wake up and solve a new problem in my business. Well, I've kind of embraced that most of my career, that I'm a firefighter. I'm good at it. I can put out and lead people through those things. So we leaned on skills of my ability to lead people. I believe in people over process. And gosh darn it, we just gritted it out one client at a time. We got some marketing to work. And along the way, we were able to develop what I believe is an irresistible offer. Now, cover on top of that this marketplace because of the way it's been closed. And we're having records in every category: sales, clients, growth. Like, we literally look like we've come out of nowhere, when in reality, we're 6 years in the making.
That's just an amazing story, how you got started and where you are after 6 years, Vinay. And what would you tell entrepreneurs, especially during this COVID situation? A lot of people might be transitioning into a different career, and a lot of people, students, especially coming out of college and like wanting to look for jobs, but they wanted to might try in their own way into this whole e-commerce era. And we are seeing like how e-commerce has been growing. Um, over month in the last 6 months. So what would you tell any entrepreneur who are like thinking to start their own business, especially during this period, to actually like, what are those opportunities and challenges that you see for these people?
You know, it's interesting. As I've had the wonderful privilege of growing multiple 8-figure companies, sold a couple, broke one tragically, wrote a book about it. And, you know, always the driver or the thing that's always pushing the entrepreneur business owner is sales, revenue, grow the company. And it's this underlying downward pressure: sales. What's the unique way to sell something? And it's funny, I am guilty of that too. And when I look at that pressure on the business, I actually am not sure it's the right pressure. I think the right pressure is, what's the not unique selling proposition? What's the unique value proposition that you offer of whatever problem you're solving for the ideal client you have? And so I would say two things that I say to myself all the time. Do I know the audience of who I'm going to work with? And do I know what problem I'm solving for that audience? The biggest secret weapon for Fully Accountable is that we have a niche. You hear an adage that the riches are in the niches. You study business behavior. The businesses that know exactly the customer they serve are most likely to grow to be the most established, strongest brands. We serve the e-commerce, tech, and digital community. We don't live anywhere else. We know that's our audience. We speak one type of terminology. And the problem we're solving for them is offering a fractionalized outsourced back office through a controller and CFO, where we do the work for them. We don't try to do anything else but solve that problem, where we get their time back for a fraction of the cost, the money they spend, and they get experts who immediately hit the ground running. So we say time, money, and resources. So the value proposition we give is that at a fraction of the cost, we can do far more work faster than you could build. Well, that was working even up until COVID. But our number one objection always in business was, oh, we'd love to have that in our office. Well, now that the office, at least at this phase, is gone, our number one objection is completely eliminated. And we're back to always our value proposition. And so when I look at businesses that took a hit, some because community behavior has changed, others because they were doing okay during a good time, but they really had a better sales proposition than they did value proposition. And for anyone looking to either restart or change, I would really encourage you to make sure you're solving a problem. What is the true value to the consumer that you think you're talking to? And when I look at business closures, they either try to talk to too many people, they don't know who they're talking to, or they don't know what problem they're solving.
Wow. So I think thanks for sharing that insight on like how to think about the unique value proposition there, Vinny, because sometimes it is super important, and it's a simple thing to know for any entrepreneur to really understand, like the couple of things that you talked about, really knowing the audience that you're trying to solve and nailing down the problem that you're trying to solve. I think those are the two important questions for any business, irrespective of what they're doing in the in the global economy. And
And
once
it's so noisy, right? Like, how do you stand out if you don't know who you're talking to? And so, by the way, in that book I wrote, I have a detailed analysis about this idea of a value proposition. So I highly encourage you to dig in. It's for your benefit. Like, I can provide you the resource, but you can totally do this. The world out there kind of has the model reversed. It should be who, what, and how. The world kind of has a how, who, and what thing. It's got it reversed a little bit. And so you should know who you're talking to, what's their issue, and how do you help solve that issue. If you can follow kind of that matrix in the way you market to them, sell, and provide your product or service, I suspect you're going to make better momentum, especially in a marketplace that's changing.
So audience, if you're listening to this, just reverse that a bit, like how the outside world is actually being taught. The who, what, and how are the alignment that we need to go through. I think thanks for sharing that insight, Vinny. And now coming back to post-pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Like what do you think is the biggest opportunity post-pandemic for any kind of business, and especially maybe like let's stick to that e-commerce business. Now we are
Yeah.
seeing and thriving like a lot of e-commerce business because how the business are run
Yeah.
now, and we are only going to hopefully thrive even after post-pandemic because of the whole environment. So what are the trends that you are predicting post-pandemic?
So if you think about what got us into this phase, there's a big term called direct to consumer. And basically that means that we're just selling our product with our own shopping cart directly to the customer. We're bypassing a marketplace or even a retail store. Early days of direct to consumer, there wasn't a lot of adoption of buying online. So the mantra was, even if you sell at a loss, you want more people buying, more people buying, more people buying. You need to create the behavior and disruption by people buying. And hopefully a retailer would like your disruption and want your digital disruption by being direct to consumer. Well, now that the buying behavior is increased direct to consumer, I think this attitude of running at a loss or even has to change to what are you running at a profit margin to acquire the customer? You know, the average direct to consumer brand in e-commerce spends 42 cents of every dollar either acquiring or reacquiring the customer. They're overspending the money to acquire the customer, which means they have razor thin margins. And if you can actually start to address your acquisition costs of the customer, you can become a more profitable e-commerce direct-to-consumer brand and be more competitive. And I believe those brands are the ones that are absolutely going to do more than endure. They're going to thrive. And so my bit of advice, thinking of that trend, is right now, we got to change the habit we had before, which was like kind of $0 liquidation. Don't lose money. Well, one of the problems is, as a leader of an e-commerce brand, is we want to be in every marketing channel: Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Google Ads, search, native. We want to be everywhere. What happens is the person who's running that stuff has kind of fear of missing out on a marketing channel, and they're spending too many marketing dollars that go back to this issue of where your audience is. So if you know who your audience is, maybe tighten down the amount of marketing channels you have and make those work and shut off the ones that aren't working.
I think just understanding the marketing channels and how they're helping you acquire your customers is the super benefit there, Vinny. And what now coming back to your story, like what makes you get excited every day? Like, you know, working on your products, working with your customers, like what makes you excited every day?
So and I want people to recognize I believe in seasons to a business and even a career. And the way I look at seasons now that I'm a little bit older than the average person in business is I look at seasons as a 5-year run. And I think there's a first and a half, second half to a season, a 2.5, 3-year kind of seasonal half time to each company and business season of life. Well, I'm in a season of life where I have multiple companies we built. I run one full time. I own two others where I serve as the chairman of the board. But all day long, I am the leader of leaders. I have 3 COOs. I have a whole full management team at each one of those companies. My job is to create vision, make sure we're on point for strategy, defend culture, but really invest my time in the leaders of our businesses. I spend my day in leadership, mentoring and training, and I'm all day long doing that. So I am really acting as what you would believe as a top level CEO leading the leaders of our company.
That is just amazing, Vinny. Thank you so much for actually sharing your journey. I think it's just amazing how you got started coming out of college with a law degree and then being a lawyer and transitioning into this whole tech industry and
Yeah.
now creating these wonderful companies and creating jobs and helping people and mentoring. And you just shared, like, that's what excites you, your leadership and just mentoring other people to be at their best. I think that's the main insight that I got from talking to you.
Yeah, and so what I would say for where I'm at, if you're looking at a vision, is, I remember reading a book by Bob Buford. It was called Halftime. And so you can get the premise of the book. It's halftime. If a man's life expectancy is 80, somewhere around 40, you start having a halftime change. And the whole premise is, in the first phase of your business career, you're trying to go for success. In the second phase of your life, you're trying to go for significance. And so when I look at my success that we're having, my total passion and excitement of significance comes from this idea of leadership development. I believe in people over process, but I think you need people and process to make great businesses. And so I get super jacked up and excited. I had 2 board meetings today. I run those, but I'm helping other people to run businesses. I do this with young people that I'm mentoring. Like, I just encourage people to go out and take the talents you have and help others. And gosh darn it, the zeal for life will show right up, right alongside you, because you're just doing things by giving to others, you're truly the one who's going to get the most out of it.
Wow. Wow. There's a lot of great insights that we got from this show today. And audience and listeners, please definitely check out fullyaccountable.com/drivenbydoing to check out Vinny's books, CEO's Mindset and False Profit. I think there's some amazing resources that you're going to get, and please do take advantage of it. So Vinny, where can people reach out to you or find you?
So if you live in that e-commerce, tech, and dig world, then you're somebody who lives in our community. Please reach out to us, fullyaccountable.com. If you're not, but you still want that resource, go get it. It's in the show notes, that link to get that. And then finally, we just care. So we, through this whole process, created an email, wecare@fullyaccountable.com. You need help, point in the right direction, just a little encouragement, drop the note there. We have a full team around. Literally, we are passionate about 10,000 businesses doubling their profit margin. And if we can offer a little bit of advice, shove in the right direction, talk you off the cliff, then we're there. And my social handles, I'm very available. I have teammates who sit on top of each one of those social handles. And so we're pretty accessible.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Vinny, and sharing your journey and great insights for all the entrepreneurs and students who are coming out of college. I think this has been amazing. And do you have any final thoughts for our audience today?
I just think that, you're a lot of noise today. I sometimes say the way you're going to get there is, for what journeys worked for me, is just don't give up. Push through that hard day. Peter Drucker has been phrased with saying the days can be long and the years are short. And gosh darn it, he's not far off on that. And so just push through the long days. Sometimes you just need to go for a walk or take a nap before you make a big decision.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for actually ending the show with that great insight, Vinny. Wish you all the very best for your future journey as well. And thanks for helping a lot of great entrepreneurs from all across the US.
Well, thanks for having me on. I love your passion for helping and mentoring. So we're excited to come alongside and help you too. This is really great.
Thank you so much, Vinny.